Would you like to quit bringing bottled water and drink the water from your RV's faucet and not get sick and actually like it? We've been doing it for years, and I'm going to tell you all about how we do it. It's a lot to get through, but we'll get you there. Coming right up. Hey everyone, it's James, and today we're going to go over something that is near and dear to my heart. It's drinking the water from your RV. And we've been doing this since day one of our RV journey, so I'm excited to share these tips and tricks with you. Now, this video started as an actual magazine article, like a hard copy magazine in RV Magazine, which they quit making, but this was one of the articles that I wrote for them, and I went through basically these same steps. Since you can't find that magazine anymore, I'm going to assume you can't find the back issues, so we're going to do this in video format to get this information out there for everyone. Okay, early on in our RV journey, like day one, we realized there were two approaches to how to handle drinking water in the RV. And like most things in RVing, there's not like one right way to do it and one wrong way to do it. So the first approach is to bring bottled water. Now, there's not all bad to that, right? I mean, when you bring bottled water, you're pretty sure it's fresh, as long as you get quality water. It's readily available. You can pick it up anywhere. It's easy to keep cold. You just put it in the fridge and you've got cold water anytime you want. It's very convenient. On the other side, there is drinking the water out of your RV's plumbing system. And this is the path we decided to go down. Now, a large part of this is because we started off in a Class B camper van, very small space. We didn't want to dedicate the space and or the weight to bringing bottles of water. So that was pretty important to us. Also, we didn't mind saving money and not producing all that plastic waste. So we decided to learn how to drink the water. Now, if you want to drink the water from your RV, you first need to define what you want that water to be. And I propose that you want the water to be three things. And the first of these is clean, because let's face it, nobody wants to drink water that's got gunk floating in it. So floaties, rust, sediment, dirt, whatever. It doesn't belong in your drinking water, and it doesn't belong in your RV's plumbing system. So clean. Now, that's different from sanitized. The next thing you want from your water is you want your water to be tasty, because if you're not liking the taste of the water, you're just not going to drink it, right? So clean and tasty. And Steph and I, we're cyclists, and so we're very familiar with like taking 2 bottles of water and sticking them on your bike, and then you go on a long bike ride, and then at the end of the ride, those bottles of water have been sitting out in the sun, and so you drink water out of like a hot plastic jug. It's not great, and you don't want that in your RV. And then the third thing you want from your RV's drinking water is you want it to be safe. Basically, nobody should get sick from drinking it. Now, this means like bacteria, viruses, heavy metals, lead, all that sort of stuff. But the trouble with this one is you can't necessarily see, smell, or taste any of these things. So at some point in your RV experience, you're going to have to take someone's word that their product or filter is doing what it says it does. So great, you want the water to be clean, tasty, and safe. Well, you might be thinking, okay, well, I normally fill up from city water sources, and they've got chlorine in them. They're clean, tasty, and safe, right? But at some point, you're going to come up against something like this. Now, what do you do here, right? I might trust the city to deliver drinkable water right to that point where it says drinkable water, but I don't necessarily trust the last RVer who was here that they didn't maybe rinse out their sewer hose with that drinkable water. So you're going to need to be prepared to deal with situations like that while you're on the road. Now, how do you take that situation and get, well, in that situation, I probably just wouldn't fill up, but let's say, how do you ensure that you get clean, tasty, and safe drinking water all the time in your RV? It takes two things. It takes the right equipment, and it takes the right habits. And either one of these without the other is not going to get you where you need to go. So first we're going to tackle the right equipment. So let me get out and get the stuff that we bring with us, and I'll meet you outside. All right, it is a beautiful day here at the campground at Laguna Seca Raceway. And this is a campground where they actually warn you not to drink the water. So this is very much on my mind. Okay, so you need the right equipment and the right habits. And the most obvious piece of equipment in the RV water system is your hoses, right? So The whole RV universe has sort of standardized on freshwater hoses being either white or blue in color. Don't try to buck the system. You might know what you're doing with the black hose for your freshwater, but the next person, somebody may be trying to help you out at the campground. Maybe they don't know your system, and so you might wind up just stick with white or blue, okay? Now, they should also be drinking water safe. This means they won't leach chemicals into your drinking water if they get hot or whatever. And I know I drank plenty of water from garden hoses when I was a kid, and I'm still alive, but that is, I think, in spite of drinking water from garden hoses instead of because. Anyway, white or blue, drinking water safe. Now, our personal hoses that we have here are the Camco EvoFlex hose. And I'll put a link down in the description on YouTube, but these are by no means the only hoses that you can get. These are just the ones we have. I like them because we tend to RV in the winter quite a bit, and they don't get super stiff in the winter like some other hoses. They get cold, they're really hard to maneuver. These do not seem to have that problem. So we travel with two lengths of hose. This one is a 25-foot hose. This gets you from the water spigot to your RV, and we have a smaller 4-foot hose that gets us from a filter coming up into our RV's plumbing system. Okay, so hoses, that's the most obvious piece of equipment, but it's not all about hoses. You're going to need some other accessories. Generally speaking, when I'm shopping for other RV water accessories, I prefer stainless steel fittings where I can get them rather than something like stamped brass. I prefer these because they take abuse a little bit better, and fun fact, even lead-free brass or zero lead brass, they can legally contain like up to 0.25% of lead. Who knew, right? So I'm like on a mission to get rid of brass accessories in my RV water stuff. And you can say, I got one here I still need to get rid of. Anyway, so stainless steel when you can get it. You may want things like hose end caps, and here's a set of them. There's another one on this one here. These you just put in the ends of your hoses when you have them in storage, and you do that basically to keep critters, bugs, whatever from getting into your hose. Nobody wants that, right? You might want to bring a pressure regulator, although we don't travel with one, and I'll explain how we do that later. But if you do travel with a pressure regulator, be sure to try to get a stainless steel one if you can. You might have quick connect fittings, and you can see here I'm pretty big on quick connect fittings. I've got them all over my RV's water system. These are plastic. Stainless steel ones are available, and upgrading to those is on my list. At some point I will be upgrading those. You might also have a funnel that you want to use, or a spout that's got a shut off, something like that. Generally speaking, when you're buying these accessories, the place to go shopping is not like the bargain bin in the sprinkler aisle at your local home center, right? You want to think about this as something you might be drinking out of, because kind of in effect you are. So that's kind of the rule of thumb, is don't cheap out on the accessories. Now, probably the biggest accessory you're going to have in your RV's water system is a filter. And here behind me, these are two filters that we've used both of these at one time or another, and they come in a wide variety of price points. So if that's what the universe of RV water filters looks like, how do you know which one to pick? Well, it helps to think about your filter strategy is like in two phases. First, you're going to want to filter water at the point of entry. This is where the water gets into your RV. Now, for a point of entry filter, you want a few things. You want it to have a high flow rate, because you don't want to stand there all day filling your RV. You want it to have a low pressure drop, because nobody likes a little dribbly low pressure shower, right? And you want to wait for it to stay sanitary when you're not using it. Because if you think about how you use a filter like that, use it when you're hooked up. You're not using it when you're not, and it may be a few days in between. You don't want it to get gross while you're waiting. Now, the other kind of filter you're going to use is what we call a point of use filter. Now, this is where you're filtering the water that's going to go into your food, into your body, etc. In this environment, you want just the maximum filtration you can get and the maximum amount of safety you can get. And so we have different filters for both of those. So let me take you over there and show you how we've set up our point of entry filter. Okay, so here we are over where we would fill up the RV. So this is our point of entry filter. It's going to filter all the water going into the RV. This end of the hose, although it's not hooked up here because they deliberately tell you do not drink the water, would be hooked up to the campground spigot or wherever you're going to fill from. Water comes into our point of entry filter. Now this is just a standard 2.5 by 10 inch filter housing. I made this little mount for it to mount up on, and we mount it here, and then the water comes out from there into our RV. Now inside this filter, the canister, is our FitRV's 3-in-1 filter. And we'll get into more detail about this filter in a little bit, but just remember that this does all those things you want from a point of entry filter. It's got a high flow rate, a low pressure drop, and in addition to all that, it's got like 0.2 micron filtration, so that cleans things out of the water. It's got activated carbon in it that makes it taste better. And probably the most important thing about that in this application is that filter cartridge has an Agion silver additive that helps prevent the growth of microorganisms while it's in storage. So think about it, when I'm done filling up, I'm just going to store this in the storage compartment there, and that will just be sitting there. And so that Agion additive helps keep the filter from getting funky while it's in storage. That is our point of entry filter setup. Okay, so that was the point of entry filter. The filters all the water going into the RV. But remember, some of that water is going to wind up in the toilet, right? So for the water that's actually not going into the toilet, but that's going into our food or into our bodies, we have a second place to filter, and we call that a point of use filter. And this is sort of where our point of use filter winds up here. We filter the water just at the time and place when we are going to use it. Now, why, if we filter it going into the tank, why do we have to filter it again before we're going to drink it? Well, there's a couple reasons for that. The first reason is that, you might not realize this, but your RV's fresh water tank is open to the out of doors. It has to be. There's an overflow tube, right? Otherwise, if it didn't have the overflow tube, you couldn't get water into it because the air has to get out for the water to get in. So there's an overflow tube, and it's possible, not super likely, but possible that you maybe have like a bug or something crawl up the overflow tube, or some dirt get up in there or something and make it into your water supply. Not likely, but it could happen. That's one reason to filter it again. Now, the second reason to filter it again is this makes sure the water that we are drinking is as fresh as possible. Remember that hot plastic jug thing I mentioned, from being a cyclist? Well, if you think about what your RV's water storage tank is like, it's a hot plastic jug. You fill up, and then 2 days later, after parking out in the sun, you go to drink the water. It's not going to taste so great. So by filtering the water just literally a half a second before it hits your glass, this is going to get you the best, freshest, and best tasting water that you can possibly get. Now, we have a separate fixture for this, and that's this. This is cold water only, and it filters right underneath here, like it comes out. In fact, let's go outside and I'll show you our point of use filter. Okay, right here, this is our point of use filter. And we use a product from Guzzle H2O. It's their Stealth 2x10, I think is what they call it. So basically, this is a filter that has two standard 10-inch filter cartridges. And these are the same 2.5 by 10-inch cartridges that you saw me use over on the other side of the RV at the point of entry. This has two of them. Now, in the first one, I've got a 0.5 micron carbon block filter. And those are not expensive at all. You can pick them up fairly cheaply. And I've got one in there just because it has two canisters. Next, we have our FitRV 3-in-1 filter cartridge. It filters down to 0.2 microns, yada, yada. You'll hear all about that in a minute. And then finally, we have this little gizmo. This is LED UVC water filtration. Not water filtration, really. It's more like water purification. So basically, that will inactivate anything alive in the water. Bacteria, viruses, protozoa, whatever you have. Kills them off. Now, it does use power to do that. So we have 12-volt power wired up to this filter. And, that's kind of the only negative. I guess it uses a little bit of power. But the upside is that our RV's drinking water out of that spigot you saw inside always tastes the same, and it always tastes fabulous, and we're very confident that we're going to be completely safe drinking it. And we've done that all over the country. Okay, but now you might be thinking, well, my RV already came with a water filter installed here in the galley. Do I have to go buy another filter? And no, not necessarily. So there are options if your RV came with a pre-installed filter. Like Winnebago, I know, puts a water filter under the galley sink on the cold water side in many of their units. Now, we make a special size of the Fit RV 3-in-1 filter that fits that housing that's common in many Winnebagos. It's the Culligan 600A size. You can pick them up later. And then if you have other ones like you saw in the Guzzle H2O, those are 2.5 by 10 inch size. If you have some other manufacturer, maybe they put a standard size one. The 2.5 by 10 is kind of an industry standard size. And so then you would get the standard size filter for that. And so now, before we get to the habits, I'm going to tell you a bit about, I've mentioned it like 5 times already, so I'm going to tell you a little bit, this is a bit of a plug, about the Fit RV's 3-in-1 filter. This is something that we found and have made available to everyone because we think it's a good fit for RVers. So, first, the Fit and after that, there will be no more talk of filters and we'll get into some other stuff. Okay, so first, the Fit RV 3-in-1 filter is intended only for further filtering of already drinkable water. Like you can't filter battery acid or pond scum or sewage or anything like that and expect to get drinkable water out of it. It's good, but it's not like a miracle filter. Okay, but it does get your water clean, tasty, and safe. First, there is a 5-micron outer wrap that supports a midlife rinse that gets the water clean and it extends the life of the filter. It is made with activated carbon, powdered activated carbon that's embedded, like in the filter media. That will make the water taste better. We all know about activated carbon filtration. And it has 0.2 micron filtration to remove almost everything from the water. So clean, tasty, and safe. But there's one other thing that we think makes it just a home run for RVers, and that's that it is made with an Agion silver additive. Now what that does is that prevents the growth of microorganisms in the filter media while the filter is in storage. So that's sort of our Fit RV's 3-in-1 filter in a nutshell. If you'd like to pick one up, we sell them on Amazon. Just go to thefitrv.com/filter and we'll take you right over there. Just make sure you get the right size. If you have a Culligan, get the Culligan size. If you have a standard filter housing, get the standard size. Okay, enough of the plugs. So now let's get into the right habits, because the best filter in the world isn't going to do you any good if you misuse it. So you're going to need to adopt some proper habits to be able to drink the water. And the first habit you need to get into is sanitizing, because clean water doesn't come from dirty pipes. So if you want to drink the water, you need to sanitize. How often should you sanitize? Well, you need to sanitize your RV's freshwater system regularly. Now, what does regularly mean? Well, it could be different things for different people. So let's say you're a typical seasonal RVer, and you take your RV out of storage in the spring and you put it away in the fall. I'd say probably once a year is maybe enough for you, depending on how much you use it. That once a year is kind of the minimum entry point to being able to think about drinking the water. So in that case, you would, take out the antifreeze and sanitize your water system in the spring, change the filter cartridge at that time, use it all summer long, and then when you go to put it away in the fall, toss the filter cartridge and get ready to do it all again next year. Okay, but like Steph and I, we RV more than most, and we RV all year long. So for us, sort of 2 times a year is sort of the minimum that I would consider sanitizing. We sanitize once in the spring, just did it. And then we'll sanitize again in the fall when we get ready for our fall and winter RV trips. Now, we also, if we were to go on like a big trip, like say we had some trip planned to Alaska or Patagonia or something like that, I would sanitize it before we left, because I'm not sure that I might have the opportunity to do that on the road. Now, when you sanitize, remember, you need to sanitize your entire RV's water system. That would be the holding tank and the plumbing. So it's hot and cold, all the fixtures, etc. Sanitize the whole thing. Okay, now the most common way people sanitize their RV's water systems is with bleach. And this is not a detailed video on sanitizing. You can find any number of recipes and instructional videos out there on how to sanitize your RV's water system. Couple things to keep in mind though with bleach. There are basically only 2 levers that you've got that you can change the controls with, right? You can change the amount of bleach you're using, or the concentration of the bleach, and you can change the amount of time you leave it in your RV's water system, right? So the magic numbers that you're looking for is a concentration of 50 parts per million of chlorine for a duration of about 1 hour. And that equates to roughly 1 cup of bleach per 50 gallons of water. So that's, follow whatever steps and recipes you want to, but shoot for those numbers, 50 parts per million for 1 hour. And By the way, when you do this, use unscented bleach. I don't know who thought it was a good idea to make like melon flavored bleach or whatever, but don't use that. You don't want it in your water system. The other thing to know about bleach is that it loses its potency over time. So if you have a jug of bleach that you can't remember the last time you've used it, start derating that bleach about 20% per year, and you start doing that after about 6 months of having the bleach. So that's sanitizing, but sanitizing is not the same thing as cleaning. And so what I use currently is the Thetford Fresh Water Tank Sanitizer. So this is a two-part process. So there's the first step, which is a detergent solution. And the way you use this is you will get the detergent solution into your RV in the appropriate concentration. You'll turn on all the fixtures until the soapy water comes out, and then you drain it, and then you rinse it, and then you do the same thing with a sanitizing solution. You put that into your RV's water system, run it through all the fixtures, make sure it gets everywhere, and then you rinse it, and then in my case, you rinse it and rinse it and rinse it. So a couple important things about this product. It is not bleach. And I started using this because we had a lot of Truma water appliances, and they are very picky about not putting bleach into their water heaters, for example. So this Thetford water tank sanitizer is not bleach, it's benzalkonium chloride. So you can use that, and you are not putting bleach in your water system, so you can get it in the water heater. Now, the downside is it does require extra rinses. Like when I'm done with the sanitizing solution, I don't just put in one rinse. I rinse it 3 times, because to my nose and to my taste, it takes that long and that many rinses to get the stuff out of your water system. So it's not something you can do last minute, like right before you're going to go on a trip. Don't leave it to the last minute, because you're going to be spending quite a few hours out there rinsing out your RV's water system. So don't leave it till the last minute, but that's what we use right now. Just as a little aside, this thing is kind of handy. It's the RV Inline Sanitizer. So if you use the power fill on your RV, you can't just pour something in your RV's fresh water tank. So this RV Inline Sanitizer, it's just what it looks like. There's a little reservoir, you fill it with whatever bleach or sanitizing solution you want, hose in, hose out, pushes that stuff and carries it right on in your RV's plumbing system. Not affiliated, just use the product. Okay, so that's sanitizing. That's your first habit. The next habit is what I call keep it fresh. So basically, in practice, what this means is that we use the water from our RV's onboard tank exclusively. We never hook up to campground water except to fill the tank, right? Now, there are a couple reasons for doing this. Number one, and probably the most important, is it prevents stagnation. So think about it. If you filled your RV with water and then went to a campground and hooked up and didn't use the water from your RV's onboard tank, and then you go home at the end of a week, that water's been sitting in your tank a week. So by continuing to use the water from our RV's freshwater tank, we ensure that it never gets stagnant. It's never sitting around long enough to do that, because we're using it all the time, we're replacing it all the time. So it prevents stagnation, but it also prevents accidents. So we travel with a cat. He has the ability to turn on faucets. If he were to do that while we were hooked up to city water, it would just keep running and running and running until it overflowed the gray tank and all over onto whatever. We'd come back, there'd be water in here, the cat would be up on the counter like, on a little island. It'd be disaster. So by not hooking up to city water, we eliminate that possibility altogether. Another interesting thing is by not hooking up to city water, we don't need to use a pressure regulator. Remember, your RV's fresh water tank is open to the atmosphere through that overflow tube. You're not going to build up pressure in that fresh water tank. It's just not possible, because excess water will flow out. It's not going to pressurize it. So we don't travel, as you saw, we don't travel with a pressure regulator. I have one, it's at home, but we just don't travel with it. Okay, so that's the first habit, is keep it fresh. The second habit, I guess. Next habit is practice safe hookups, which is not nearly as risque as it sounds. What that means basically is be mindful of your water source. For example, right here at the Laguna Seca Raceway campground, they will tell you, do not fill up with this water. It has too much arsenic in it. I don't want that, so we don't fill up here. at the beginning of the presentation, you saw that drinkable, non-drinkable water. If I came across that, I wouldn't fill up there. So be mindful of where you're filling up. City water, usually good, not necessarily always good, like here, right? Well water, a lot of rural campgrounds may be on well water. Sometimes that well water is great. Sometimes it is not. You need to just be okay with passing on a water fill up if you're not sure about the quality. We've done that. In fact, we've even filled our RV's water tank with bottled water. And besides feeling completely decadent, like, showering with bottled water and using silk toilet paper or whatever, I don't really recommend that because, it feels ritzy, but it's not really great or sustainable in the long term. Okay. Finally, we have a set of habits that I just like to call keep it clean. And these are a collection of things, many of which you probably do already, but just be mindful of them. First, keep your freshwater hoses white or blue in color. We've already covered that. Keep your water accessories clean and in a separate container. Never a bad idea. Keep hose caps on the ends of your hose when you're not using them. Don't store your drinking water hose with your sewer hose. Put them in separate, I hope nobody does that, but put them in separate places. Now, when you're coiling up a hose, drain the water out of it. Like hold one end of the hose up, let the water drain out, and coil it up here so that the water is draining out of the hose down there. But when you're doing that, be careful that you're not dragging that other end of the hose through the mud, right? Now, another good habit to get into is when you're putting away your water accessories, take a towel. I don't know if you saw, there was a towel in my service bay over there. Take a towel and just get in the habit of just wiping them down. It's not that it hurts them to be wet, but it just means that it forces you to take a chance to sort of have a look, and you'll see if your hose is nicked or worn or in need of replacement or something like that. So just take a minute to wipe it down. Do that with your electrical cord too. Change your filter cartridges regularly. What is regularly? Well, that depends on you and your RVing. And last one is don't cry over spilt water. So when you hook up and you're ready to fill up, I always run the water for about, 20, 30 seconds, depending on how long I think it needs to run. If we're the only people at a campground and we're way far away from the office, I might run it for a little bit longer. But run the water so that you're getting fresh water out of the pipes at the time when you fill up. Okay, and that is gonna do it. That is how we are able to drink the water out of our RV. This water here, it's on. This water here, and nobody's gotten sick in years and years of RVing, and it's really not that hard once you just kind of get in the habit and get the right equipment. So I will put links to all the products that you saw me use and talk about. I'll put them two places. I'll put them in the YouTube description down below, and I'll also put a link to a post on thefitrv.com where I will have links and maybe some even further details about this video. So follow those links if you saw any of the products that you liked, and we'll hook you up. And hopefully that's going to do it for now. This is James, and happy drinking water. Anyway, we'll see you later. Bye.